Welcome to Struggles of the Spirit. I'm your host, the Reverend Leah Udell, and I'm delighted that we can be together again today. And I have an interesting woman, a guest, Leah Wittenberg, and she's going to talk about bottled water and how water is a natural resource that we're somewhat ignoring and throwing away. And she's making efforts to try to be responsible. So this program today is about bottled water and the scarcity of our natural resources. So, welcome.
Thanks for having me be here, Lee.
We're glad to have you here. It means a lot to have the public interested in this subject.
Yes.
Years ago, I used to do a lot of mountain climbing, and the water in the mountains was very clear, very clean, and you could just walk up to a stream that was without any kind of protection about water, and just sit down and or lie down on the ground and just suck the water up in your lips. It was wonderful.
I don't think you'd do that anymore, Lee.
No, no.
But you know, I think the perception that spring water or mountain water is healthy has been part of this bottled water debate that we're having, because people who have a sense of, oh, a mountain spring is going to be the best water for me, may be seduced in some ways into buying a bottle of water that has a beautiful mountain spring on it.
They'll be lured away.
What's that?
They'll be lured into that idea.
In a sense, that's right, yes.
Hmm. Yeah, well, I always enjoyed my fresh spring water from the wilds, but it's not existent anymore. And you can get chlamydia instead.
Right.
A little tiny bacteria.
That's right.
That will get into your system and make you miserable. So the water isn't what it used to be. So what are you doing yourself and the people who work with you to try to do something about this crisis?
Well, I'll say a little bit that I'm with a group in Burlington called Kick the Bottle. We're talking about water bottles in this case, and trying to, it's a small volunteer group that came out of the Burlington Legacy Project and the Burlington City Environmental Action Group. And we're really mostly just trying to educate people, which is why I'm here, about some of the facts about these water bottles, which I don't have a water bottle with me except for this one, which we'll talk about in a little bit. Is this the camera here, Lee? Yeah.
I'm sorry?
Is this the camera right here that people would see?
The camera's
something?
on these tripods.
Oh, okay. Oh, that one over there.
You see these
okay.
3 tripods?
Yes, I see it now. But
each one has a high-tech camera in it.
But basically, we're trying to do some education around the environmental aspects of plastic water bottles, the social aspect of using bottled water, and to try to one of our slogans is Tap into Burlington. We want people to get back into using tap water, whether it's in water fountains or from their own kitchen sinks. And so kind of a twofold educational aspect, and also trying to get people to take some actions.
I like that. You know, in the restaurants in Burlington, it used to be that they would just automatically pour you a glass of water when you sat down. Nowadays, they don't do that. You have to ask for it.
And what I do, Lee, is I've made a point in recent years to ask for tap water, rather than, because now if you just say water, you're liable to get Perrier water or, you know, something that you have to pay for.
That's right.
And we actually are trying to encourage restaurants in the city to have tap water and to even only have tap water rather than having bottled water to sell. And there is at least one restaurant in Burlington that was, after hearing some of our facts, decided that they would no longer carry bottled water, and that's Skinny Pancake in Burlington.
Skinny Pancake?
Skinny Pancake, which is a crepe place. But they were very impressed with some of the environmental facts that I hope I'll get a chance to share with the people viewing today that about how we really need to begin to drink our own tap water again.
What do you mean, drink our own tap water?
Well,
you raised my curiosity.
well, if you go to out to a lunch place and you get bottled water, that water could possibly be coming from Maine, or possibly could be coming from Cleveland, or it could
Cleveland, wow.
or it could be coming from Fiji or Australia or France or
Wow.
And so there's a lot of issues there. One of the issues, just on an environmental level, is thinking about the cost of shipping water from Fiji to Burlington and what the environmental implications of that are, the use of oil. But there's another issue about several issues about removing water from one community and shipping it to another, rather than investing in the infrastructure in our own tap water system to make sure that our water is healthy and clean.
Why don't you show our public the amount of oil that's...
Yes, this is a great visual. Have I got this pointing to the camera? This is I guess this is a 1 liter bottle, was originally a water bottle, and I have it filled 1/3 full of oil just to demonstrate, and this is just a startling fact, that it takes about 1/3 of a liter of oil to produce 1 liter water bottle. Not just the water bottle, not the transportation of this bottle from Pittsburgh to Burlington, but just to produce the bottle. And this was actually one of the facts that got me interested in this campaign, because we're struggling so with issues about oil, as everybody is aware at this point, and issues of global warming, and also just the fact that we may be running out of oil. We're at our peak oil consumption. And so that is what, every time you buy a bottle of Crystal Lake water or Poland Springs water, think about that bottle filled 1/3 with oil.
Wow.
And it makes it look a little bit less appealing.
Absolutely. Are people generally aware of this?
I don't think, from my experience in talking to people about the environmental impact of production of these bottles, I haven't found people really know about how much oil it takes, for example, to create a bottle. And Lee, I'd also love to throw that number out that I told you earlier,
Sure.
which is that in the United States alone, which is the country that we least even need bottled water, there are some countries in which the water supply is so poor that bottled water might not be a bad idea. But in the US alone, we use about 32 billion of these bottles of water in 1 year's time.
32 billion?
32 billion. So that's, essentially use it once, throw it away. And I just recently had someone send me an email that said it takes about 400 years for one of these bottles to decompose. So
400 years?
So while about 30 or 40% of them are recycled at this time, and it would be great to get that number up, figures, 60 or 70% of them are just thrown into the trash, and you see them floating you see them everywhere in waterways, on the highway. And so, 400 years later, this video that I just saw said, you could send your great-great-great-grandchild a message in a plastic bottle and they could get it, because it wouldn't have decomposed. So the 32 billion was that figure that's a 1-year usage. And everyone's talking, of course, about CO2 and global warming right now. The CO2 release to produce those 32 billion bottles is about 2.5 million tons.
Wow.
So we're compounding the environmental error here.
Now, Pete Seeger has had a real personal interest in saving the Hudson River.
Yes, I remember that.
And I really admire him for it, and he's made a lot of progress. Has he gotten into this issue as well?
You know, I don't know, but I do remember that, and I actually saw him in his boat, the Clearwater,
Yes.
on the Hudson, when he was trying to raise awareness. And I don't know if you remember the song that he wrote, Lee, about water.
How does it go?
I can't sing, but the words were something like, "The water is dripping in old New York City. The water is dripping in old New York town." Let's see, what was the rest of
It
it?
sounds like him.
The reservoir's drying because we're supplying the water that drips in New York. That was what I remember. But yeah, I don't know that he's gotten involved, but there's if you just go online at this point, there's quite a few groups around the country that are, and internationally, that are fighting the fight about bottled water.
Well, back years ago when I was in seminary, which was in 1952, 53, I was in New York City at the seminary for all kinds of people who were interested in learning. And I used to go walking down next to the Hudson River on Riverside Avenue just to restore my soul. And the river was terrible. It was like an open sewer.
Yes.
That was in 1952, 53. They have cleaned it up a lot, thanks to Pete Seeger. But it was pretty terrible. Did you ever see the Hudson in those days?
Oh, absolutely. Well, absolutely. I was born in New York, so.
Well, then we have a lot in common.
Yeah, yeah. And they have cleaned that up, which to me is really inspiring in the sense that we can have a problem like this and.
Immense like that.
What's that?
It was an immense problem.
Yes, and that people get turned around when they get educated. So that's actually very inspiring.
I want to see if anyone is going to phone in. Remember, everyone, this is a talk show, and we want you to phone us and to tell us your reaction to what you're hearing. It's a lot more fun if you give us your feedback. So we're talking about recycling, and we're talking about water, and how water is a precious commodity, and we're not taking good care of it at all, and we're trying to get people interested in doing that. So please phone in and just give us a ring and tell us your thoughts about this subject.
You know, Lee, I wondered if some of the viewers might phone in and share some history with us about water fountain. You know,
sure.
Their impression of, you know, these water bottles are really only with us in the last maybe 10, 12 years. Before that, we had to be creative in, if you went out on a picnic, you had to figure out another way to bring your water with you, yes. Or if you were walking around town, or, you know, so it's interesting how something that was non-existent not that long ago has become a multi-billion-dollar industry, so that people think they can't leave home without it. But, you know, if any of viewers care to call in and reminisce a little bit about what you used to do before the water bottle, that would be great.
We'd love to hear from you. We'd like to know that you're hearing us and that you have a lot of thoughts around this subject. Please give us a call. Bill, what is our number? We have a phone number.
Oh, it's right up there, Lee. 651-0589.
651
0589.
0589. Please call us. We'd like to hear from you and to hear your experiences. And we get interesting stories.
I bet. I bet. Now, water fountains, by the way, you know, schools, of course, have water fountains in them. I don't know if there's a regulation about how many they have to have, but there are some issues in the schools about whether their vending machines are selling bottled water or vitamin water or different types of waters. Again, rather than thinking about the fact that a water fountain is a good thing to have. And as a member of this Kick the Bottle group, we'd actually like to see the city of Burlington put some more water fountains in around the community.
We used to, in business, I worked in business for some years originally for the New York Central Railroad, and they used to call them water cooler.
Well, you mean the coolers that have the big bottles attached to them? Well, you know, what's interesting about those, Lee, there's two possibilities for a business. One is just to have the Burlington city, or whatever city you're in, tap water funneled through a cooler or even a filtration system, but still use our local resource, which is tap water, versus having those big 5-gallon plastic bottles, which is water that's been imported from somewhere else. And so there are a lot of water system companies now that will come into the office or the workplace and tap into the tap water. So if people want cold water or hot water, they can still have one of these systems, but it's using tap water rather than bottled water.
I see.
And so that's what we'd like to encourage. You know, as long as there's a water source in the office or somewhere, it's possible for all these different various water systems to plug in that way.
Good idea.
Yes, and actually we're trying to, and I think we've been successful, although I haven't heard the details of getting Burlington City Hall to start making some of those type of changes on. We would like to encourage the city not to have any bottled water at its any events or that type of thing. I believe they're complying with that.
Oh, great.
And as well as trying to shift some of their big bottled water canisters to tap water.
They were big bottles.
Yes, the big 5-gallon things. And Burlington, by the way, has excellent quality tap water. It's, you know, it's well regulated and gets high marks for quality. Some people say, well, we don't really like the taste of the chlorine in the water. And what I say to people is we've got to invest in our local water systems. If you don't like the chlorine, you can put a filter in your own house that will filter out the chlorine, and you're still using our local resource, which is our water that's here for us to use.
Someone had a lot of foresight when they put those water systems together years ago.
Our municipal systems.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it didn't just happen. It took a lot of courage and foresight and money to make them occur.
That's right. And we want to see money continuing to go in to maintain those systems. So, you know, if folks are thinking, well, I don't really like my city water, I'm going to buy tap water, bottled water because I think it's healthier or safer, we would like to see them calling their municipal water system, and if it's not Burlington but somewhere else, and really saying we care about the quality of our water. That's
so phone in, and I'd like to hear your voice on this subject. Don't be silent. It's a lot more fun for us if we hear your voice.
Some of the groups are doing taste tests. We haven't tried this yet out on the street, but having a sample of tap water and a sample of bottled water and getting people to taste and see if they can say which one tastes better to them.
Wow, I'd be almost afraid to do that, you know. What are they going to give me to drink?
But another thing that viewers, if they did want to call in, it would be interesting to hear if people are using bottled water, what their reasons are, and see if we can have a little bit of discussion about whether those are good reasons or whether we can, because there are some good reasons to use bottled water sometimes.
Sure, sure, it's true. And you and I, we go back a ways, and When I was a boy growing up, we had a local fellow who has become famous. His father had a clothing store, and he had a rumble seat in his car. Oh, what was his name? He's on laugh shows a lot. It's terrible I can't remember his name. But you all know his name.
And so anyway, what's the rest of the story, Lee?
About that person?
Well, no, you said you were telling us a story about him.
Well, that people like that could make our history much more interesting. Bring it back into a current discussion, what's his? Anyway, do you have that trouble where you sometimes forget?
Absolutely.
Anyway.
Lee, what's your memory of, prior to the fact that you could leave the house with a water bottle or whatnot? And what's your memory of how you might have taken water to a picnic or?
Thermoses.
Yeah.
Thermos bottle. That's what we used to do. It would have a glass liner inside a glass bottle, and you took your thermos along because you wanted it to be clean and cool.
That's right.
And you could do that with a thermos bottle.
I was remembering going camping and having these canteens, which actually tasted miserable.
They did.
Those metal things with some kind of a felt line.
It was the military had them.
Yes.
I remember in scouting, I was a Boy Scout, that we had those military water containers.
That made you want to drink anything but water, unless you were really thirsty.
I don't know why they were like that.
Well, the thing now that people are similar to a thermos is the stainless steel bottles that folks are getting, and they're refillable, and carry it with you and fill it up. We're actually, I think I was mentioning before, hoping to get some of the local restaurants to advertise that you could come into their place and fill up your reusable water bottle.
Yes.
So that, not so much restaurants as like a convenience stops. And we think of it as a win-win solution, because somebody might want to fill up their water bottle. They come in, fill it up, and while they're there, grab something else that they might want, a donut or who knows what. And so we'd like, one of our long-range plans is to get a list of all the places in the city that might let you come in and fill up your stainless steel bottle or whatever, and put that out as part of our campaign materials.
That's a nice idea.
Yeah. In fact, speaking of New York City has a map that of just that. You can go online to a certain site in New York City, and it will tell you all the places that you can refill your water bottle.
No kidding.
So if they're doing it in New York, we can do it in Burlington.
For sure. That's neat. Yeah, well, life is fun and enjoyable, and it has lots of history in all of our lives, and we don't recognize that, and we don't appreciate it, and I guess partly what I'm saying is, let's talk about it, and let's spread the word, let's awaken our curiosity in our history, and we don't have to hide it.
I think that, following your thread a little bit, Lee, that the if we look back to our history, the creativity in solving problems or facing things like even a simple issue like water, or how do I bring water with me, there's so much wisdom in looking back. Instead of feeling stuck with, sometimes when I talk with people on the street, they're like, well, what else am I going to do? So I agree with you that our history is rich with solutions.
Well, we used to have a train that was would bring passengers or merchandise to the front of this building.
That's right.
We did. You can still see the walkway, and you used to be able to see the rails, but the rails have been pulled up, and it's interesting. I don't know why we did that. I suppose they got in the way.
Well, there is a lot of talk that we'll be going back to more rail as the cost of oil increases and it continues to increase, that rail travel will again become a preferred mode.
And faster.
Yes.
Much faster than flight. My son, he lives in the Boston area, and he often goes down to New York City for business. And he likes to take the train because he doesn't have to wait to go through security, and he's on the train and pretty quickly to New York City, and he doesn't have to worry about the weather or whether the plane will get through or not.
Lee, there was a movie called The End of Suburbia. I don't know if you saw that or know.
No, I didn't.
Well, one of the interesting facts in that movie is that when suburbia began to be developed all over the country, there was rail service out to suburban outposts, and people commuted via rail. And that actually it was one of the automobile companies, I think it might have been Ford or GM, I don't remember right now, that actually bought up the whole rail station system and dismantled it.
I heard of that.
Yeah, because their goal, as they saw it, increased their business, was to get everybody into cars.
Yeah,
and
I heard
thinking
that.
about it now, it really feels like a devastating choice.
The person I'm trying to remember is Peter Falk.
I
went to school with him, and he was an interesting guy. And his father owned a clothing store, selling shirts and socks and underwear. A small outfit, not a big outfit, but very personable and very friendly, very open. And we didn't go to catalogs or mass stores to shop. We just would go to the Falks, see what they had. So times have changed.
Well, you're really speaking in some ways about, which is something we're seeing a resurgence of, which is talking about a local, shopping local, eating local, drinking local, drinking water locally, really trying to reinvest in our community in some ways. I think it's a real community issue.
You're right.
If you know the person who's selling you a shirt versus some anonymous, catalog, people are talking to each other, and
it's a lot more fun.
Yeah, and I think I think it actually gives people more of a sense of community, which I think we need right now in these times.
Absolutely. Yeah. So, waiting for the telephone to ring.
I'll say the number again, Lee. It's 651-0589.
Please call us. We'll answer your phone call, and you'll be on the air. We'll hear your voice right here in the television studio. if you call. So give us a chance to make the connection, and it's very interesting. And I'm sure you have experiences, as we have, about past history and what's changed and what's still the same. I remember I used to take a train to Chicago, and you get on the train in New York City, and by the time it was the next morning, you'd be in Chicago. And you'd be having breakfast in the dining car, enjoying a linen tablecloth and a waiter. And,
Gee, I've never done that, Leah. I'd like to do that. In fact, I'd love to sleep in one of those sleepers like you see in the movies. And
yeah, well, we did that. It was fun. It was really fun. And one of the fun things was you had the whole room for yourself, and you look out the window, and you can see the world waking up.
yeah.
You know, people going to work and getting in their cars, and it was fun. And we've stopped all of that, which is tragic.
I guess this, everyone going in their own individual car or somewhere. Of course, airplanes are different, but we're in a little bubble
Right.
on our way to wherever.
Well, I loved sitting there in the last car of the train, in the observation car, and watching the world whiz by as you go along on the train. That's all finished. Nobody does that anymore. We're in an airplane going many miles per hour, up high, and not aware of what's happening down below on the earth. So we're here talking about water. I'm not sure if we've concluded anything.
Well, I'm thinking of some of the other. We have a handout from our group, and one of the things on it is basically says, "What can you do?"
Mm-hmm.
We can talk about the environmental issues, but if I could read a few of these things, one
Please.
is just to make a personal pledge to kick what we call the single-use water bottle, use a refillable water bottle. Hopefully, folks that are listening will spread the word to friends and family. And even if you just want to use that 32 billion figure, that it takes 32 billion, we use 32 billion of these a year, or if you want to remind a friend or family member when you see them using one of these about the third of a liter of oil. So spread the word. Seek creative solutions to workplace and event water usage.
I like that sentence. Say that again.
Seek creative solutions to workplace and event water usage. And let me say something about that, Lee. This year in Burlington, there were two festivals on the waterfront that had big water tankers. Instead of having all the booths selling bottled water, we had big tankers with spigots. And so you could either fill up your water bottle at the festival, or they were selling water bottles, or they had compostable cups. But trying to get away from this idea that at a festival there's going to be 20,000 bottles or 10,000 plastic water bottles sold. Let's get a big truck with fresh water. And so that actually happened at one of the brew fests, the Burlington Brew Fest, which was a beer drinking event, but nevertheless they had fresh tanked water brought in, and also at the Dragon Heart event, which is a cancer boating event.
Yes.
And so both of those events had big tankers with water, and that's what I mean by creative solutions, to start saying, instead of saying, well, here we're having an event, we have to have water for the people, so we'll have to have plastic water bottles. There's resources out there, and we can begin to brainstorm what can we do. And There's resources online, but also if people wanted to contact the Kick the Bottle group, they could. If they say, well, we're having a luncheon, you know, with 200 people, what should we do? You know, let's use our creativity to come up with some solutions rather than just default to the water bottle. A couple of other things, maybe we can get back to that, but just to finish this list of what you can do. Support investment in upgraded community water infrastructure. Lots of words just to say, let your local community know we want our tap water to be tops. Drink tap water at home and ask for it at restaurants. And then learn more about the local and international issues. And there are a couple of really great websites which I could spew out here if people want to look them up.
Tell us.
One is called Food and Water Watch, all run together, the words, www.foodandwaterwatch. And they have a great booklet that they put out on what to do at your event. I've got it here somewhere. And actually that brochure was how we ended up getting these tankers at one of the events. Oh yeah, here it is. It's called I Love Tap Water, Free Your Event from Bottled Water. And I downloaded that from Food and Water Watch. It's a practical guide to take back the tap at your next event and avoid the waste, expense, and environmental problems with bottled water. So these kind of resources are available. That's foodandwaterwatch.org. But even if you just put in Food and Water Watch, you'll find it. And there's another one called thinkoutsideTheBottle.org, which I really like. And they've got a lot of the international, the issues about, the international issues about water bottle use and the corporate issues, meaning how are corporations like Pepsi and Coke and Nestle's being cooperative or not cooperative about labeling on water bottles and so on. So both of those groups are really, really full of information, and I hope that people listening will do a little research and also talk to people about, you know, if you see someone at the store with a six-pack of bottles, you know, just mention it, say something about it. Why do you buy those? One of the things I like about this issue, Lee, is I feel like it's a great issue for looking at personal responsibility and our responsibility to a world community and to the planet. There's so many issues we could talk about like that, but the water bottle is just a great one to have that conversation about, is my personal choice to do something really convenient, how do I weigh that against my responsibility to the broader community and to my personal community and to the world community? So I find this issue a great vehicle for that conversation. Because it certainly is convenient to get one of these and open the tap, throw it away, and drink it and toss the bottle.
That's true. That's true. We do that so easily. That's
right. You know, and yet if each time we reached for a water bottle, and of course there's other issues like this, we were tapping into the implications of that action on a local and a global level. There's a book, and I can't think of the name of the author right now, called The Last Drops of Ancient Sunlight. Have you heard of this?
No, I haven't.
And that may not be, I may be paraphrasing the title, but I'm very struck. But this author talks about how every time we use energy now, we're using ancient sunlight, because all the coal and oil resources that we now use for energy really were the results of the ancient times that were the sunlight that produced the plants that these ancient creatures ate and then got compressed and turned into coal millions of years ago. That's ancient sunlight, and that we're using up the last of that resource. And I found that, if I'm explaining it well, I found that very
I think you are.
profound
I think you are.
to think about. Okay, so I'd rather take my car for a mile than walk to the store. Well, it's, in a sense, I almost say to myself sometimes, what right do I have to use that drop of ancient sunlight? Is that a critical need? And, so it's become a very interesting, I challenge myself with that question a lot, whether it's about water bottles or other times I'm just freely using energy and not really thinking about the fact that it comes from somewhere. And I have a responsibility to it.
We do. We tend to forget.
It's easy in the culture that we live in, of course, to forget about it. I'm involved in actually going to be showing a movie tonight in Essex Center, a movie called Garbage, that I'm showing in conjunction with the Chittenden Solid Waste Center. And in that movie, there's a man from Virginia, I think it is, or West Virginia, talking about the mountaintops being removed. And he basically says, every time you turn on your switch, think about my mountain.
What does he mean?
He means think about the fact that they're cutting down the mountains in my backyard so that you can turn on your light switch so easily. And if we really thought about that more, do I really need to turn that switch on right now? So I know we're moving a little afield from water, but it's all connected in some ways to me, to really thinking about what does it mean to be responsible to understand that something I do has an impact in West Virginia or somewhere else.
I like your ideas very much, Leah. You have a lot of things in your head. You're inspiring us. So thank you.
Well, you said something to me earlier, Lee, about how it's challenging to be. What did you say? To live a spiritual life, or what was the exact
I don't remember.
phrase? I can't remember, but that it's hard to be to live and with the challenges of life. And what's the name of this show? It was
Struggles of the Spirit.
That was it. You said the struggles of the Spirit, and I really see these types of struggles as struggles of the Spirit. Self versus community, and what is how do I be a responsible community member?
I don't know how much more time we have. Bill?
Looks like it's about 12 minutes after, Lee, so.
What does that mean?
I guess, does that mean about another 15 minutes? He's shaking his head yes.
Okay.
Again, I'll say the number, since people have been quiet. If you'd like to call us and join in the conversation, 651-0589. Lee and I are tired of hearing ourselves talk here.
I'd like some input from others. I think we don't realize the influence that our actions have on the world around us.
Yes. Yes, that's the thing, and I think you can kind of numb yourself out to that, or you can pay attention, and of course there's a balance. Every time I turn on a light switch, if I thought about mountaintops in West Virginia being removed, it might make it hard for me to function. But there is some awareness that I think we really need to stay connected to the fact that we are connected.
Yep, it's true.
Now I'm looking at your cup, for example, Lee. The coffee cup has an eco clutch to hold it. I wonder what that means. You think it's a
Eco clutch?
It says eco clutch. It's the little hot ring that goes around it, and it says, this product is made from recycled material and contains a minimum of 80% post-consumer fiber.
Oh.
So, you know, every little thing, your coffee cup holder has a, you know, somebody thought about the fact that we could do a better job making those so that they were not, it's not as wasteful.
Yep. The Native Americans were more intelligent than we are about the use of natural resources. And they really were not willing to throw food and natural resources away the way we do.
Yeah.
And we have a lot to learn. We have a lot to learn.
Well, that's why hopefully, you know, some folks hearing this conversation spark a light and make some different choices. And, you know, I certainly don't want to set myself up as being perfect in my choices, but it's just that thinking about taking that extra pause to think about waste or resources that I think is important. You know, I just jumped into my head thinking about, just to point out again kind of the scope of this issue around water bottles. Up at UVM, water bottles is the biggest selling item on the campus.
Really?
Yeah.
In the stores?
In the bookstore or the little cafes or whatever they have up there. Water bottles is the biggest selling item. And there is a group up at UVM called One Less Bottle that's trying to educate the student body. Obviously, the young people are going to be, both are having to deal with the results of our environmental decisions, but also the people who are going to possibly make the changes and liking to get the word out to young people to make some. Now, they may not remember that there was a time where there wasn't water bottles. And Lee, as long as people aren't calling in, I may as well throw out another fact.
Please
out
do.
There, which is that 40% of the water that's currently sold in water bottles, even though the label might say Crystal Lake Spring water, 40% of that water is actually tap water.
Oh, so they're lying to us.
They are. I'm afraid they're distorting the truth. And they will take the tap water and run it through a variety of processes and then spit it out into a bottle and put a beautiful label on it and make you think you're drinking spring water. But in fact, that water is fairly unregulated unless there's a complaint. Whereas your tap water is highly regulated in municipalities. So again, that's a myth that the money makers of the big corporations have done a really good job of getting people to believe their water is pure, using words like pure and crystal. If you look at the labels, some of the labels are just terrific. In fact, I think I'm going to make a collection of some of those, the names, because they're just out there, you know, Crystal Spring and who knows what, you know, for water that came from Cleveland or Pittsburgh or who knows where. It's very hard to find out where the water's coming from, actually.
Well, the Native Americans were a great model for us and still are, how they used natural resources and how they were frugal. We are not like that.
Lee, you're older than I am, I believe, and since you were in school in 1952, and but I've heard a lot of stories, and I often think about during World War II, there was people were very frugal. I mean, my grandparents saved string and rubber
Oh, yeah,
bands.
we did.
And,
We
you know,
did.
there was a different sense of that something could be used again, or the value in using something again.
What are you driving at?
I was just thinking about, you said the Native Americans had a lot to teach us, and yet I'm thinking also about our own history again, and our grandparents or even elderly people in our communities have things to teach us about using resources differently. And we need to tap into that wisdom, I guess.
That's true. That's true. Being an older character, it was something that has really made me both bitter and amused. When I was in school, public school, they taught us that you need to do contour farming, and you shouldn't plow right up to the water line of a creek or a river. You should have curves and have a protective area of trees and shrubs and bushes, so that the water on the earth, the surface, doesn't just drain off the earth's vibrant resources into the river to be washed down to the Hudson or to the Atlantic Ocean. And that was drilled into our heads in school, public school. But nowadays, we ignore all of those things, and we tend to ignore the need for contour farming and for conservation. And we're denying our history and the lessons that we had from our history.
Yes. Do you think, Lee, in your experience, that people are beginning to turn back towards some of that more conventional wisdom, or do you feel hopeful, I guess, about that?
Well, the big thing is money. We are wanting to make a lot of money, and if not plowing the last bit of land for your farm will cut back your earnings, then our tradition is, that's too bad, you know. We want to make money. I don't think that tendency has changed, because it costs you money not to use up the land.
Although in the long run, I think the truth is that it costs you money in the long run to have to over-fertilize the land and
Sure.
so on, but it's that immediacy, the immediate sense of gain versus the longer-term gain, not looking far enough into the future to see what the impacts, even to your own financial impacts, might be.
That's true.
So you're not that hopeful that that the lure of money will be overshadowed by wisdom.
Well, American Indians had some interesting customs. One of them was that when you would drive into a neighbor's, or ride your horse into a neighbor's backyard, you wouldn't just bang on the door to be let in. You would slowly let people realize who it was, and you would encourage them to acclimate to your presence, so that you would want to meet with you, and it was a different kind of environment. We were not just out for money or for large numbers of people visited. It was interesting.
5 minutes.
5 minutes.
And so the Native Americans were great that way, and they wanted us as neighbors to have a chance to decide whether they wanted to talk with us or not, and to be gentle and be open and communicative. And we generally haven't done that anymore. And so we have a lot to learn.
Yeah. Well, my guess is that's why you're doing this talk show, Lee, to, you know.
I wish I could remember more of what the Native Americans did. They wouldn't go out and kill the buffalo just randomly, the way the white man did. We would just shoot them just for fun. We wouldn't kill them for food or for hides, but we would kill them for fun. It was terrible.
Well, it was that difference in the sense of immediacy. What you're talking about is, I think, the Native Americans saw more what the impacts, that the quote that the seventh generation company uses, that Native Americans saw the impact of their actions on the next 7 generations.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Tell me more about that.
Well, I think that was the quote that they really considered. I can't think of the exact quote, but they considered the impact of their actions for the next, I think it was 7 generations. Whereas I think that immediacy of in the United States or in the Western cultures of not looking to, not thinking about that this bottle is going to last for 400 years, or that we're a very immediate culture, and certainly as technology is advancing, everyone wants everything immediately, the computer, the Twitter, all these things that are, and I think that's one of the real cultural differences, is when you think about the Native Americans and culturally really considering their impact on the earth, on what they were generating for their children and their children's children, and it just doesn't seem like we really are operating that way in our culture.
They were studying their effect on the world around them.
Yeah, and having a minimal, trying to have a zero impact, zero negative impact.
Well, I've enjoyed hearing you talk about your knowledge about nature and conservation and water. So I thank you, and I thank you for all of us that you are willing to do this. We have a lot to learn.
Yeah, well, and I'm thrilled to get a chance to talk about it. I could go on, and if folks are interested in getting involved with the Kick the Bottle group, I guess they could call the studio here.
Sure.
And if people can get my number and take it from there.
Good idea. Thank you, Elise.
Thanks, Lee. I'm glad to see you. Have a conversation.
We had a lot to talk about.